We're going to call this meeting to order. It is 1 p.m. on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. This is the Superintendent's Workshop. We are still abiding by CDC guidelines. We are trying to maintain no more than 10 individuals in the room with us at one time. And then we do have our lobby that is open for individuals that would like to come in and watch it through technology. Joining us today on Teams, we have Board Member Terry Barenborg, Board Member Jackie Rosario, Dr. Schiff, and then here in the TEC room building with me right now, we have Dr. Moore,
Hello.
Mrs. Justice, Mrs. Diagresta, Mr. Meyer, and Brandon, our technology associate behind us. And then so what we'll do is we'll bring individuals in one at a time as Dr. Moore needs to bring them in for presentations. I thank everyone for joining us today. We have a lot of exciting work that we're doing here at the district. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moore for a series of presentations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are entering a very exciting time within the school district of Indian River County. And today will be signs of the growth as we begin to have conversations regarding a number of renewal contracts, as well as two items I will present after each of the cabinet members, almost all the cabinet members, have the opportunity to present those renewals or policies related to their specific areas. The first will be an update on the district strategic plan. This is an opportunity to bring together a draft copy of what is the proposed strategic plan. There were minimal corrections and update in terms of some of the data, so I'm looking forward to providing that information to board members to receive their feedback in hopes to finalize the strategic plan at our next board meeting. So looking forward to having that. And then as well as a conversation that revolves around the work that's been done over the last 5 months as your superintendent, associated to an opportunity to provide feedback to me in the form of an evaluation of our progress collectively as your superintendent over the last 5 months. And this is something that I probably wanted to bring in July, but based on feedback from board members and the amount of work that lies ahead, I think it is a good practice to model as we go through evaluations of all of our practices and all of our behaviors as a system. And we start that process with me. So I'm looking forward to providing an update as it relates to my 90-day plan, as well as a number of other initiatives and bodies of work that have revealed themselves over the last 5 months, seeking opportunities within a structure for you all to provide feedback to me, both individually and then publicly, as well as within this strategic plan, which would be the first item that I would present, an opportunity to define at the opening of schools or in the summer, what are the key performance indicators in which I will be evaluated for the 2021 school year. And I think the work that the team has done collectively that represents the efforts of the entire district, I'm very excited to present that plan, those annual targets, which will serve as my key performance indicators for the upcoming school year, and provide a continuous conversation each 9 weeks for me to provide updates to the board and receive feedback regarding the progress that we are making collectively to ensure that we're maximizing the potential of all students. So before we get to that exciting work, I will turn it over to Mr. Meyer, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, renewal of a number of contracts. Mr. Meyer?
Are you saying that Mr. Meyer's work is not exciting?
I'm going to say it is fantastic, because
Awesome.
every time you ask Mr. Meyer how he's doing, it's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, and through the chair. I am doing fantastic, and I am excited. The two contracts renewals that we bring to you today to discuss during this business meeting and for approval this evening are things that I really, truly believe in, and I'm excited to continue and see implemented in our school district next year. The first of which is the renewal of our agreement with the Environmental Learning Center for 2021. As many of you know, as I spoke with you through your individual briefings, you're well familiar with the school district's partnership with our very own Environmental Learning Center, where we provide the opportunity for our third and fourth graders to have that chance to visit that site and really get a hands-on experience, which is, just a true special experience for students in Indian River County. Coming from the Panhandle, we have a lot of natural beauties, but the Indian River Lagoon is pretty special. Having a student who's going to be a fourth grader next year, personally my son, the fact that the school district is enabling each and every third grader to have this opportunity to go to the Environmental Learning Center and get that hands-on experience, I think is phenomenal. We hear a lot about assessment. We hear a lot about the different things that go on in our schools these days, but for this district to provide this opportunity for our kids to really get out and about and see the world around them, I think it's something that each of you, well, I know that you are, not that you should be, I know that you are proud of. So this year I had Mrs. Berenborg ask me as I was giving the briefing, were students able to participate this year? What I found out for you, Mrs. Berenborg, is that all third graders were able to go, and about a third of our fourth graders were able to get through it before we had to cease going because of the COVID-19 pandemic. As you read through the contract, we do not compensate the Environmental Learning Center for services unrendered, so we did not, pay them for those classes that were not able to go, and we retain those funds that could be used towards this year's contract. So that is the item, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Mrs. Berenborg, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Meyer, for answering that question. Part of the question I also asked was if there were students that did not get to participate, so we have 2/3 of the fourth graders that didn't get to participate, will there be any way that they can participate as fifth graders?
So the challenge that we're going to try to work through there is we've done a lot of work with the Environmental Learning Center to align the standards. And so we would need to, before I can make that promise to you, look at the fifth grade core standards and look at a curriculum that they're going to do. One of the things that Dr. Moore has charged and challenged me with is that whenever we leave our schools for non-instructional time, that we're going to assure that the activities the students do are aligned to the standards. Like I said, we don't want to push and stress the kids out and go unnecessarily, but we definitely want to make sure that it is in alignment with the core standards. So we need to take that look at the fifth grade standards and see what we can develop. And then also, we do still have some concerns about when we will be able to start doing some of the field trips, and we'll be able to get all of them in. So, I think that as it's designed, we would prioritize the third and fourth graders, and we can certainly continue to look for that fifth grade cohort.
Mrs. Rosario, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. I love the ELC. It's a 64-acre property, and it provides a varied activities, different learning opportunities for children of all ages to get involved in environmental learning. I did have a question, though, as you're talking about field trips. I hope that we're not, I know that COVID-19 changes a lot of what we may possibly decide and what direction we'll go in for the coming year. But I can't highlight enough the importance of a field trip for children. You learn so much when you're out and working in hands-on experiences. It's quite different to send a child on a field trip to Orlando SeaWorld or Disney World. The amount of people in a park of that size it is quite large, obviously, and for obvious reasons. It makes it more dangerous, I suppose, or something like that. I don't know how to put it. More susceptible to possible contagion that's out there, some viruses, the virus, COVID-19. But when you're local, there is a shorter amount of travel, obviously. The environment can be contained. I know that the director at the ELC will be more than willing and has expressed to me on various occasions that she is more than willing to accommodate anything that we request in order to make field trips happen, if that's the case, moving forward. I just don't want to limit field trips for children and underscore their value. I mean, I know that we've got to put learning at the forefront, which we are, but I just don't want field trips to be a fun thing not connected, which I know we're not doing. But let's not discredit the importance of what they do learn when they do go on a field trip.
I completely agree with you, and I think that we are in alignment, and which is why we support this item in particular and making sure that we are fully committed to this again next year.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Berenberg, I see you have a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, having been a fourth grade teacher when these ELC trips started, seeing that it's in our backyard, and it's kind of a rite of passage now for our fourth graders. So for those 2/3 that didn't get it, I understand aligning standards. I totally get that because I was a teacher. I'm still a teacher. Wondering if there's a possibility of maybe next year offering a summer camp opportunity for those kids that missed it. Just throwing that out there.
Understood, and we will continue to look into it. I have to admit, I have not been to the Environmental Learning Center yet myself, but I intend to go with my family, and I agree. We should continue to utilize them as an opportunity for our students, and we can definitely look into that for that group of students.
Dr. Schiff, you have the floor.
Thank you. A quick comment in reflecting on this and the value of the ELC and the programming they provide. Mrs. Rosario's comments about a lot of this happening outside, which may give us some advantages that in-classroom strategies don't at the moment. One of the things I'm hoping, I would be hopeful that as this is an outdoor space, that maybe there's some stuff we could do with responsible social distancing. I also realize, though, and want to be attentive, that if kids need to be on buses to get there, we may need more buses. We can't rely on individual parents having the capacity to get their kids there, much as we might want all kids to have this experience. So maybe there's some way we can think about moving forward to run more buses or create a bus route for this for kids who can take advantage in a way that's safe and responsible as we move forward, but gives both the access that we want while maintaining the safety and equity that we need in order to take full advantage of this program.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Justice?
Yes, thank you very much. I listened to what Mrs. Berenborg said about aligning to the standards, and I agree with that. I think it's very important. What I also understand to be true is that there's value in this. There are value of learn things beyond the standards. So I think if there is an opportunity for fifth graders to go next year that did miss it, I think it's of value. The lagoon is a very, very important part of our ecosystem and a very important part of the economy here in Indian River County. We need to raise children to respect the environment, to understand the importance of the lagoon. So getting as many kids out there as possible, I think, is probably advantageous, not only for those children and their learning experience, but for the future of our community. So my position as a board member would be, if there's a possibility that those students that missed it, a summer camp's difficult, right? But if there's an opportunity to get the kids there, I'm not going to hypothesize about what's going to be allowed at the beginning of school next year. Right now, it's my understanding that surfaces are not as much of an issue as they once were. So, you know, things are changing, we're learning more, so I won't hypothesize about what's available or what we'll need to accomplish it, but I do see value, as the other board members do, in our children going to the ELC, and we are proud. I am proud of the fact that we've been able to help broaden some children's horizons. Unfortunately, what we know to be true is that some kids have never seen the ocean, and they live in Indian River County, so maybe we need to start thinking from that perspective, giving children a bigger worldview.
Absolutely, and I completely agree, and we'll work on that. This initial agreement was a renewal for what was the consistent practice, but we can certainly look into an amendment to that for this current year and get with the ELC about the scheduling.
What do you, Dr. Moore, I mean, do you feel there's value beyond the standards? Like, where do things like this fit in, you know, for fifth graders who missed it?
Through the chair, I think there's always value in field trips that are reinforcing what we're teaching and covering in classrooms. above and beyond the standards, to be open and honest. I think as you transition back, we'll transition back in an abundance of caution once we clearly define what that reality, which right now still is unknown. I agree. Students missed the rite of passage, understood, and we can problem solve to say, how do we bring that reality for those who have never actually had the opportunity to participate in that missed opportunity as a result. So it's just a matter of problem solving, identifying when it would possibly be. I don't see it as a large obstacle or something that we can't do. It's just a matter of moving into a more or a better time where we have a clearer understanding as to when we'll be able to do that and how can we do that while at the same time staying true to a rigorous instructional model that does cover the standards and does so in a way in which allows all students not only to be exposed to those standards, but fully comprehend, understand, and master.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, for that. As a parent, I've been on that field trip with my son, and it definitely is it's a nice experience because when you go there as a guest, you don't get that hands-on experience so much as you do when I went on the field trip. So it's definitely it was a nice learning experience, and it's something I've seen that my kids have been able to take through as we go over to the lagoon. One thing I would like to see is we have budgeted for the field trips for this year. So what I'm hearing is 2/3 of the fourth graders did not get to go. I would hope that we could set those funds aside and not allow those to be gobbled up into the budget until we actually make a determination if we're going to work it into the fifth grade end of the year field trip. So I just want us to be conscious of that, not to use the funds that we're not using this year, the 2/3.
All right. Understood.
All right, Dr. Moore?
Go ahead.
All right, my second item through the chair is another renewal for a contract that has been in the district, and this is our contract with Fuel Education, also known as K-12. Per Florida statute, we are required to have a choice of 3 virtual instruction providers for our Indian River Virtual School that we select from a list that is vetted by the Department of Education. In order to provide a fully aligned K-12 experience, you would obviously have to pick a mixture of providers that enable you to have those K-12 classes. And Fuel K-12 is the only provider approved by the Department of Education that serves students in grades K through 5. They do, of course, serve students in 6 through 12 also. It's a K-12. But without this renewal, we would not have an opportunity for students who are attending Indian River Virtual School in grades K through 5 to attend. And given the current situation, it's certainly something that we can't allow for. We've had great, obviously people have different opinions, but there's never been a problem, I guess I should say, with the quality or with the parents' interaction with Fuel K-12. And we certainly believe that it's the right provider for us to allow our parents to select from. And so, Madam Chair, if we had a couple of questions there, be happy to entertain any more from any of the members.
Okay. At this time, I do not see any. Dr. Moore?
All right, thank you, Mr. Meyer. Appreciate your efforts and input, and it's always exciting to have you present. Next will be Mr. Fagan, who has also contracts as well as a revised policy. So we will go through our ritual of cleaning and sanitizing as Mr. Fagan makes his way to the, that's not Mr. Fagan.
Table.
So this is
Yes.
presentation B, annual renewal of contracts and revised policy.
Yes.
the Matthew McConaughey of the school board.
There he is.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fagan.
Couldn't find his name badge.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon to the chair, board. Wonderful day in paradise. For me, I have a few items. I have 5 contract renewals, 1 policy item that will be workshopped, and I have April financial statements and April budget amendments, and 1 small donation for Vero Beach Elementary. Of my 5 contracts, most of them are standard and routine in the renewals. First one is for athletic fields management. This is for the athletic fields at Oslo, Sebastian River, Storm Grove, Vero Beach High, Liberty, Gifford. These are to maintain the Bermuda grass fields. Same contract as last year. It's a 1-year contract with 2 renewals, and this is the 2nd renewal. Any questions? Second contract is what we call structural cabling, which is really low voltage. This is a technology service where they're able to pull cable wire through the ceiling, through the walls, and also redo any server rooms that may need to be repaired or replaced. This is a same thing. It's a renewal. It's a 1-year contract with 2 renewals, and this is the 1st renewal. Third contract is for electrical services. These are for small to medium repairs. This is with 4 vendors, a primary and 3 alternates. They primarily do services that either may be a little bit too large for some of our in-house people, or say if lightning strikes a building, we hire them to come in and completely rewire the building. Fourth one is Canvas Learning, of which we've become dependent on quite recently. This is our 6th renewal in partnership with them to continue on with their services. The 5th one is a piggyback contract for Microsoft Premier ongoing support. This basically gives us support for any platform and any software application for Microsoft on a 24/7 renewal basis. Anytime we need them, we can call them and get immediate results. Any questions on the contracts?
Mr. Fagan, I think you did a very good job in our private presentations that you gave us to each individual board member. Oh, actually, we do have one comment. Mrs. Berenborg.
Yes, hi, Mr. Fagan.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the meeting. I appreciate it. I just want to say for the public, one of the questions I asked was whether or not the fees were the same as last year, and indeed you answered that they were. There were no increases, correct?
That is correct,
All right.
Chair.
Thank you.
All right. The items I have are just the April financial statements, April budget amendments, and we have a donation for Vero Beach Elementary, $13,000 from Global Partnerships for the purchase of 60 additional Chromebooks, laptops. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Fagan. I appreciate it. Mr. Fagan will be followed by our Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Bass, who will also be covering a revised policy.
Good afternoon. Through the chair, I have policy 4162, which is an update of the drug and alcohol testing of employees who perform safety-sensitive functions. The reason for bringing this forward is in December of 2019, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration increased the number of random tests that you would give to your bank of drivers from 25% to 50%, and as a result of that, created language change that needs to be in the policy. Also, the FMSCA implemented a new drug and alcohol clearing house, which will give us real-time information on any drivers who test positive or who refuse to be tested. In January of 2023, school districts, along with other agencies that utilize these bank of drivers, will not be required to request the previous year's information. They can just go online and find it there. Will not be required, but we more than likely still will do it. So the changes reflected in this policy are updates by Neola recommendations by Neola, and I submit to you for approval.
Okay. I do not see any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. I appreciate it. Now, our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. John Teskey, also reviews as well as his renewal on contracts. I'm sorry, Mr. Teskey. Oh, let's get it.
Okay, this is item D.
Good afternoon, Chairman Zork, Dr. Moore, board members. Hello. So we have a few items under operations for our workshop agenda. Transportation agreements. We have 5 separate transportation agreements today. The first 2 deal with the Environmental Learning Center and the Orca Science Organization. These support the field trips that Mr. Meyer was just discussing. These support the transportation to and from the locations, as well as internal field trips that the organizations might take while the students are there. They are renewals, and I will await questions on the first 2. Wonderful. Our second topic will be the remaining 3 transportation agreements, one with Boys and Girls Club, the other with Daisy Hope, and Gifford Youth Activity Center. These are renewals as well, too. These support the after-hours extended day programs, the shuttles that we run to and from these locations after school to support supervision. I'll hold for any questions. Yes,
I
ma'am?
have to type comment. Give me a moment, please. I have to get back to my comment page.
Mrs. Justice.
Thank you, Mrs. Sork. When we're renewing contracts for buses, several board members have expressed the fact that there are some uncertainties going forward as to what we'll be able to do with buses and all of these in different things, and buses being used after school hours or outside of. I understand, we've discussed the CDC guidelines. If we were, the recommendations, right now, if we were to follow recommendations, which I recognize were just that right away, we would have had to increase the number of buses we had significantly in order to be able to accommodate the same amount of children in a safe environment for social distancing. I'm just curious, as we move forward with contracts with outside, as things change, these contracts are flexible enough that we recognize that we may have to make different decisions with some of the buses. I'm curious how renewing contracts going forward that utilize certain of our equipment, how that works going forward, not knowing what the future holds.
Sir? Through the chair, Mrs. Justice. Yes, so we are looking at many options at this time. We have several recommendations from CDC and the Department of Transportation. My job is to provide options to the superintendent for making these things happen. Working with Ms. Idolette, we have provided options. We are still fact-finding those options at this time before we make a decision on how we would accommodate that. But the contracts do state for any and all stops, trips, internal, external. There is no limit of number of trips here. If we have to increase that, there is no number limit of miles. We do bill the organizations from real time based on mileage and hourly rate. So some of the expense would be given to the organization, others would be grant funded, and others would fall within the school district. So those are all options to consider, working with curriculum, working with Mr. Meyer, if our trips are rescheduled or pushed to the right on the calendar, to budget accordingly to be able to cover additional stops, additional runs, additional protective measures, whatever those expenses would be. But we are not locked into a calendar date and a trip and a number of students within these contracts.
So the reason I asked the question is the reason that we started these contracts and working with our partners, our community partners, was the fact that for a long time we were subsidizing after-school busing to different locations for some nonprofits, but not for all nonprofits. And we had to make a decision as a school district moving forward that that $100,000 a year that we were spending, that was in addition to the other transportation costs that we were mandated to provide, we had to say, we're happy to help you with transportation, but we're going to have to be reimbursed for that because we can't offer it to everyone. And picking winners and losers in that, for me, wasn't right. So I ask that going forward, knowing where the school district will be in 2021, 2022, knowing that our budget is going to be cut, and just making sure that we're very cognizant about the dollars that we're spending and where they're going, and making sure that we're using every dollar that we can in classrooms, safeguarding that.
Through the chair, yes, ma'am. We work in coordination with curriculum, and finance actually does the billing for the trips. So you are correct. Prior to my time taking this position, I don't really know how things were happening then, but Mrs. Idelette and myself doing a full audit review of billing, it wasn't equitable. It was not spread out evenly. So as the board knows then, for a year, we met with all three organizations, had excellent meetings with Gifford Youth, Daisy Hope, Boys and Girls Club. Some choose to be billed monthly, some quarterly, and some annually. But speaking with Ms. Idelette before I came in here, no issues or concerns with our three
Strong
organizations.
partnerships, everyone working together.
Yes,
Good,
ma'am.
that's awesome,
Very
George.
strong billing, not an issue this entire school year.
Awesome.
At all.
Thank you, Mr. Teskey, for that. Mrs. Rosario, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. What are the options that you are considering, or that we are considering for the coming year in terms of transportation?
Through the chair, that's not the item that's up right now. We will be presenting this afternoon update during my particular opportunity to provide updates, in which we will review the work that we have done. We will be meeting with principals, continuing to problem solve to ensure that our plan to reopen the school system is the most thought out and productive reopening of schools in the entire state of Florida.
And we're gonna talk, at that point, you're going to give us some options in terms of transportation?
Through the chair, I'm not going to provide options. I'm going to provide an update regarding the problem solving that staff is taking, the research that staff is doing, and our plan that we are putting together to ensure, regardless of what the reality is on August 10th, that we have thoroughly thought out and run plans, multiple plans in pursuit of what that unknown reality is. We will be communicating our best thinking to the community on June 26th in a Facebook Live session in which we will conduct about a 45-minute program where we're showing parents that this is what it looks like to be on a bus. This is what it looks like to be in a classroom. These are the safety and cleaning measures that we are taking as a system, and then provide them the opportunity to give us feedback. So just as we did with walking into COVID-19 and the problem-solving process that we initiated, we'll be working on a very similar approach, pulling in our principals, a community task force with principals, community members, parents, providing feedback, but really just based on the research that we have to date, and we begin that planning, which kicks off tomorrow with our principals.
Good, I'm glad that we're doing that. The situation that we're faced now is so fluid, and unfortunately with data changing from day to day, it's often very difficult to determine how we can actually plan. We can't put a one plan in place without having plan B as a backup. But I do know that I mentioned that because Mr. Teskey brought it up, and I have had parents question and ask, what is coming up? What is it going to look like to put my kid on the bus? And what does school look like when they open? So I'm glad that we're ahead of the game, and that we are already looking forward to hearing the problem solving of this planning process. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I think we we will be the one district that not only tells the parents, but we'll be the district that shows them what it would look like, so they have a clear understanding as to what we believe the safety measures are, and they have a clear, crystal clear picture as to their level of comfort in terms of returning their students to our very powerful and impactful schools.
Thank you.
All right, is that it? I want to say thank you to Mr. Teskey for working with the nonprofits on this. I know a couple of years ago it did get a little contentious, but we're in a good place now, so I appreciate you working on that.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think one of the original concerns was how once it was discovered that it wasn't being billed, was how did we calculate the costs? And I think that was really the conversation at the time was it was hard to determine at the time, but through the last year, you and Mrs. Idolette, it seems like you've really honed in and got it down, and drilled down
Yes,
to what
ma'am. All parties
exactly it
agree.
is. So I appreciate you working on that to make it a fair billing for the nonprofit, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am. If there are no other questions, that covers my agreements.
Thank you, Mr. Teskey. I appreciate
sir.
your work. And now we'll be moving to Ms. Dampier, annual renewal of contract, as well as also, once again, a revised policy.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Dampier.
So we're on item E.
Good afternoon. Through the chair, board members. I have two items. One item is I have a renewal for the Power Schools, which is known as Unify. It's been known as Performance Matters, which is our data warehouse, so where we house all of our local, national unit assessments, benchmark assessments for our district. I'm requesting that we renew the invoice for $126,743.05. This is our third year with the renewal. Are there any questions?
Mrs. Justice?
Thank you. Dr. Moore or Mrs. Dampier, could you explain a little bit about I'm going to call it Performance Matters. Sorry. Can you explain a little bit? I mean, $126,000 is a lot of money. How do they help us to do our job?
Actually, if we had FSA data, that would be housed in there. All of our local data, and teachers utilize this in our schools to do data chats. Our principals utilize this to do data chats. We also use this in helping with the MTSS process to monitor all of the iReady Achieve 3000 data that we utilize to make decisions. So this platform is utilized quite a bit also to identify our lowest bottom quartile, our graduation rate. It houses all of our data so we can make decisions for the classroom to make those instructional shifts in our classrooms to impact student achievement.
Thank you.
Mrs. Barrenborg?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that you said that they had another name change, because when I saw Power School, I was like, okay, what are we doing? Adding something else? So I appreciate that. But there was something that we discussed that I think is important to say here. And that is, since we didn't have a lot of data that we used with this platform and yet paid for it, I had asked whether or not we were getting some sort of discount or reimbursement. And I know it's not their fault that we weren't using the data. But could you talk about maybe the fee structure going forward?
They did not increase. Normally, there's a 3 to 5% increase every year, but that was not the case this year. This is the last year of our contract proposal, so next year we'll be seeking another contract negotiation with this particular vendor. We did utilize this platform, even though we were not in a brick and mortar schools. We still utilized it for our iReady data. We still utilize it for, even with teachers creating lessons, looking at the data to make those instructional decisions, even based on distance learning. So we did utilize it, but we didn't utilize it as much as we would have had we been there for the fourth quarter. So we've used it. We've even used it now to make decisions.
Okay. Is that it?
Can I do a follow-up?
Please.
Yeah, just talk about the fact that they didn't increase their fees though, right? Because they normally would have.
No, they did not. Normally, it's 3 to 5% increase. We did not have a fee increase this year because of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that
All right, thank you, Ms. Dampierre.
Okay, next on the other item that I have, I'm very pleased. We are bringing back policy 5121. Back in February, Dr. Moore brought it before the board. This is our enrollment, our controlled open enrollment policy, and we promised that we would bring it back this summer. But since we have the other policies, I wanted to bring it back sooner than later, where we've amended the enrollment window to be from November 1st to January 15th, so it's a lot earlier, and we have one window instead of having a magnet and then a choice. So it's all going to happen at the same time. We're very excited about that, so parents can make choices ahead of time. We want to make sure that this window, I think we extended it a little bit further than before, because before it would be like 2 months, but we have almost 2.5 months that parents can have that option to select up to 3 schools. And that is new, because before they would select 1 school. Now they have 3 options. They can choose up to 3 options this year. So we're very pleased about that.
great? Comment? Mrs. Rosario?
Yes, ma'am. After reading through the policy, Mrs. Dampierre, I didn't think about this when we chatted last week, but of course I'm bringing it up now. And Dr. Moore, is it possible to add to this the exception of virtual school? Because if a parent, for example, chooses to pull their child from public school, the traditional public brick and mortar school, but wants to enroll their child or transfer their child into our virtual school program. Or if a homeschooler wants to enroll their child into the virtual school program. Oftentimes those decisions are made throughout the year at random. It varies for everybody. Some people might make those decisions in August, in November, in January, in April. It varies for everyone, and I was wondering if we could consider adding to this the exception of virtual school being open enrollment throughout the entire year, maybe just that school option. What are your thoughts?
Through the chair, I think this policy speaks specifically to the choice enrollment window, and the structured policy or procedures around that. And as it comes to virtual enrollment, I 100% agree. It should be open enrollment throughout the year. I think as we move into what will be our district's final reorg based on my initial 90-day plan, you are going to see very intentional work being done around virtual schooling and affording and expanding opportunities for our students to be involved in virtual, whether it be on the first day of school or the 150th day of school.
But we have pitched and expressed that the virtual school is indeed a school option. I mean, it was a part of our virtual fair. It's been, we've been talking about it for quite a while now as an option to school choice. So what I'm not seeing is how that would be different from what we're looking at now. I mean, the enrollment period would be the same. I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying, but
Right.
Can you understand that this policy doesn't make that different?
Sorry, Suzanne.
I'm sorry.
Put down here away from you. I didn't see you.
That's okay, and I'm not logged in to type comments, so
Go ahead.
I'm not plugged in at the moment virtually. Mrs. Rosario, if you look at the policy that Mrs. Dampierre is bringing forward, at the very top, it specifically mentions that the virtual education policy is separate from this particular policy that Mrs. Dampierre is bringing forward. And then, you know, because I'm a lawyer, you can't just look in one place, Mrs. Rosario, you have to look at multiple places. You have to look at policy 2370.01, which is a separate policy. That policy specifically speaks to virtual instruction.
Okay.
So, and I understand it makes sense to put it all in one place, but the way these policies are structured, virtual instruction is done separately from this.
Okay, so it's not considered part of the traditional open enrollment period then? It would be separate?
Right, and there's specific procedures set forth in the virtual instruction policy with regard to notification requirements, and it happens at various times throughout the year. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Justice?
Thank you very much. As much as we do to get information out about things, invariably there will be a parent who is busy with kids and a life who will not hear about the open window, right? So what are we going to do to make sure that everyone knows about the window, when it is, what they need to do? And then one of the things I think has been interesting was, you know, we talked about this when the principals did their presentation, Dr. Moore, that, you know, it's not just, school choice doesn't always mean a change. Sometimes it means you choose your own school. So will we put out information? Your home school might be your choice school, right? So if when we put out information, can we do it through the schools about choice? And what I mean by that is I think it used to be kind of a competition, right? People felt, and competition's okay. What I mean is that principals should focus on making their school the best possible school it can be so every student wants to go there. And if their student brings home a letter in their backpack and it says, this is the open window, if you're considering a different school for your child, this is the process to go through. And every principal should hope that the parents are going to look at that and say, my kid's at the right school for me. But if they're not, let's make sure we get it out. So what are your plans?
Through the chair, once again, I think when you look at our choice offerings, I think we did an absolutely outstanding job in a relatively short amount of time in turning around where we currently were, asking principals to challenge their faculties and staffs to determine if we were to have a choice program within our particular school, what would that choice be? We had varying levels of implementation. You had schools such as Fellsmere create a brand new program, and they have gone to Orange County, they have gone to Miami and visited other schools, and they are recreating a dual language school that wasn't there before. You had other schools who had simple refinements to a STEAM or STEM program that was currently already there. As a systems leader, I struggle with the work that's being done to ensure that the students who are currently sitting in our seats are receiving the highest quality of education. Being a principal, I know what that work means. You have to be able to drive that work. And from that system, you need to ensure innovation is constantly taking place and having designed in a way so you're not taking your eye off the students who are currently sitting in our classrooms, while at the same time not taking our eye off where we need to go in order to ensure we are meeting the needs of all students in all classrooms across our entire county. So we will be, once again, as we bring the reorganization, if we're going to be successful, we need to be intentional about where we need to provide support. Innovation is obviously one of those key areas in which we have nothing now. And if we are going to be successful, we need to really ensure that that system of support is being provided to our principals in a way that we could ensure every school in this district will be an A next year, while at the same time ensuring we are in the top 10, top 5. I was just waiting for Dr. Schiff to put her hands up, top 5. at the conclusion of our strategic plan. And I think that's the systematic design of our particular process. So that says a lot and doesn't even answer the question that you
No,
asked.
I was going to say you didn't answer the question, but it was great information.
Good opportunity to put it in there, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that the question is when you speak choice, it is in a lot of situations, it is competing to keep the kids that are zoned for your particular school. I think that is part of the movement of aligning the opportunities to apply all at the same time.
Yeah.
Because just by saying, hey, you get to apply first to the magnet schools, and if you don't get to go in there, you go to the second chance or the second opportunity, which is a choice school. We have full-on magnet schools, which is not common across the nation. Typically, a magnet school is a segment or a piece of a school, not the total school. And each school needs to be a magnet school. And each school needs to have some innovative programming. I think when we move to the presentation and the strategic plan, one of our transformational impact statements is that we have offerings and interest designs at each and enough for every single student in the district to have their need met and their interest met. And that's a big statement. That's saying a lot for almost 18,000 students being so diverse in our offering that we have something for everybody. And we're looking forward to designing that over the course of 5 years and really moving each year. And don't get me wrong, I am very proud of the work that our principals did, and I've only been here for 5 months, and very proud of the work they continue to do to support this particular work. But yes, we need to send it home everywhere, and principals need to be very strategic. I want my kids in my particular area, as well as those who may have that special interest in engineering or visual and performing arts, whatever the case may be. So it is a strong combination of both.
And I'd like to piggyback on that as well. We're hoping to have, we're out looking for locations, our Choice Expo that was planned in March. We had to cancel due to COVID, but we want to have our Choice Expo first, so parents will have a chance to go in, meet with the principals, look at all the programs, and then from there, they'll be able to make their decision at home, talk as a family, their top 3 choices. So that will be another opportunity as well. Of course, we'll have it on the website, school messenger, all of those modes of communication will continue to be there to promote school choice.
Thank you for those thorough answers, and I just want to say I'm very excited for parents going forward. This is a very exciting moment, and the reason that I want to make sure we share it is I don't want anyone to miss the opportunity. So thank you very much for those answers.
Thank you. Like with Mrs. Justice, have children in the public school, and it was my honor to call one of the schools and say, as a family, we chose this school. Even though we are zoned here, we are a district of choice, but I choose this school for my son. And so, we've really come a long way when it comes to choice, and so it's been a long road, but we're here now. And I appreciate Dr. Moore picking it up and running with the baton.
Thank you. All right, the next item is a presentation by me. It is a update on our strategic plan, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to bring yet again a item that has continued to grow based on the conversation and feedback provided by board members, provided by staff, provided by principals, by community members. This is a body of work that will ultimately drive how I am being evaluated, define how the district will ensure growth over the next 5 years. And not only over the next 5 years, this plan is uniquely designed to ensure that we're always looking 5 years out, and it is being created and crafted each and every single year. So it's not the typical system strategic plan where you write something for 5 years, you write strategies over the course of 5 years. that are very generic because they're 5 years of implementation. They're not aligned to the evaluation system. They're not aligned to the superintendent's evaluation system. They're not aligned to the school improvement process. The level of thought and strategic alignment within this presentation, within this body of work, is something I am extremely proud of in its creation. Obviously, in this particular presentation, this will capture the overarching goal. I will seek in this presentation to highlight the changes that have been made as a result of the feedback that you have provided. And just to set this up, last workshop had the opportunity to bring a draft of the strategic plan, listen to your feedback, and capture both individually as well as within this structure. The next thing we do as a cabinet is circle back and debrief the sharing and the conversations that were taking place right here in this form, in this structure, whether it be virtually or whether it be live, and really go through a problem-solving process to enhance and develop the plan. So what I'd like to do is highlight some of those changes that have taken place as a result of our dialogue. Maximizing the full potential of all students. We want to have a mission that ensures that we're focused in on students. We're focused in on the students and not the system. The system should have an impact on children, and we want to keep our focus in on students. So we're very comfortable that maximizing the full potential of all students is a unifying mission of our district. I will show you some data when we look at both our 2025 targets as well as our annual targets. That is a sense of validation for me. Just to kind of go a little bit backward, maximizing the full potential of all students ensures that a level 4 student moves to a level 5, a level 5 student does not regress, that we have the offerings, we have programs, we have rigorous content and instruction that meets the needs of all students, regardless of where they reside, regardless of the school that they go. This is not a system where we're playing a numbers game or moving every school to an A. We will have all A schools because we are designed in a way to meet the potential of all students in all schools. If you look to the opposite end of this slide, you'll see something that looks a little bit different. There were 4 guiding principles. Now there are 5. The new guiding principle speaks to communicating with transparency, integrity with all stakeholders. As we debrief this conversation, the need and desire for this board to include transparency resonated with all of us, and we agreed. We agreed so much we thought it should be a guiding principle. The other area, I'm sorry, we'll see that in a second. And just to remind what guiding principles are, this is the opportunity to guide our behaviors, our actions, and our decisions. Very succinct statements that everyone in the organization should know, ensuring that we are investing in collaborative cultures that promote the growth of all. And that's something that we can quickly assess and say the culture here is not promoting the growth of all. There's equitable access to high, rigorous instruction. All students have the opportunity to be in the right place. Communicating with transparency, integrity, we're all stakeholders. If people are not in the know, if that level of communication isn't taking place, we can quickly change our behaviors and actions and decisions based on quickly applying those guiding principles. Engaging in innovative practice to optimize outcomes. Are we at every level of the organization, all employees, regardless of job title, do they have the opportunity to innovate, create, and redefine and enhance their roles or how they're performing their particular roles? And then empowering problem solvers at every level of the organization. And there had been conversation regarding ensuring problem solvers. But we need empowered and engaged individuals who clearly understand what their role is and how they solve problems that their job has been created to solve. We just don't need people to come in and do A and leave when A is completed. We need to create an environment where we're always examining our practices, looking for refinements and enhancements. We believe these guiding principles allow all principals, all supervisors, all employees to always be assessing their behaviors, their decisions, and their actions, and ensuring that those behaviors, decisions, and actions align and uphold our guiding principles. Now you look at our transformational impacts. These were all, with the exception of one, drafts or fillers as we presented this information to you last time. A transformational impact isn't something you'll see in a lot of the literature or research as it relates to strategic plans. It is something that we ultimately created rather than just having a SMART goal that was 5 years out. We really wanted to touch the hearts of our community in saying, hey, what does our future look like? After implementing this plan, we want to be able to feel it, we want to be able to see it, we want to be able to touch it, and wordsmithing and spending hours talking through a very specific, measurable, accurate, realistic in time, you spend more time talking about the words you put together to make a statement that does not lead to action. So in the development of transformational impact, these are things that we want to be in 2025. All students are accepted and included within our school communities. That's not the reality now. And I want it to be the reality tomorrow because that's where my heart lies heavy. But there is work that we need to do, and I'll show you some data in a minute that will validate that we are not there yet. All classrooms are designed to meet the needs of students in the 21st century. We're not there yet. We need to ensure every single classroom is preparing students using technology to ensure that they are, in fact, ready for the 21st century. A level 3 student is not good enough for all students. A student who graduates or passes the FSA isn't good enough. A student who only takes one accelerated course isn't good enough. We want to maximize the potential of all students. All students have access to programs that support their talents and interests. Regardless of where you live, if you have the opportunity to attend a school in the county of Indian River, you have programs and you have resources that access your talents and interests. That is the innovation that we were referring to earlier. All employees are respected and valued as part of an innovative workforce. That kind of goes back to the guiding principle description I was just giving you. We want everyone to come here, feel valued, feel respected. This is not a job working at the school district of Indian River County. It is a passion, it is a purpose. Regardless of what that job title is, we want you invested and connected and to truly be part of a family. Just not the words be a part of the family, but truly be part of our family and serving our students. And all students graduate and are prepared to be the global leaders and innovators of the future. We want all students to graduate. We want all students to find success, and it was shifted and modified because graduation isn't the goal. You walk across the stage, you receive the diploma, what do you do with it? The diploma is a reflection of the tools, the knowledge, the skills, and the behaviors that we as a system have invested in you to go and do what? And we want every single student to have an edge up in the world as a result of being in our family for 13 years. That's the impact that we want to have. My recommendation is that we begin with these transformational impact statements. I would still like to receive feedback from you. But as we begin to challenge ourselves in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of implementation, these are opportunities to say, yes, we're closer to this statement. Let's enhance that statement. Let's take it to a next level. This isn't something that we live with for 5 years. This is something that we continue to evaluate, shift, or modify because we're truly and honestly implementing this strategic plan. Next, when you look at focus areas, there was one, I don't want to say major, but it was a change that I think it's small, but will have a major impact in what we define as a focus area. Equity in this system has been a priority since my arrival, and we have quite honestly struggled with how we embed equity, giving it the authority that it needs to have. So we decided equity needs to be at the forefront of the culture and climate focus area. So if you recall, it used to be culture, climate, and equity. We moved equity to the front to be the driving force. Equity, culture, and climate. You can't have culture and climate without equity. And before we were saying that culture and climate led to equity, equity is the driver in that seat. And we wanted to ensure, as we designed that focus area, we led with equity and ensured that in all things that we're doing, we are providing equity. The other organizational or focus areas remain the same. There's some minor refinements in our priority statements. Priority statements, once again, is the narrative underneath the bolded focus area, just trying to draw a level of specificity regarding within that particular focus area. This is where we will drive that work over the course of 5 years. Now, looking at annual targets 2025 and annual targets. This is new information. And if you look at the top of the screen, those are the targets for 2025. And they are bold in nature. And you will see on the top, that is the very specific: ensure the school district of Indian River County Early Learning Program ranks in the top 10 Florida districts as measured by kindergarten readiness. Increase overall proficiency on state standardized test performance in English language arts so that SDIRC is ranked in the top 10 Florida districts. And that same criteria moves in the top 10. Now, if you read that, okay, that sounds good, but where are we starting from? So what we've done here, as I described in our last presentation, is say, well, where are we right now? And in some ways, you look at this, and it is embarrassing where we currently rank. There are 67 districts in the state of Florida. Our goal is to be 10 or above by the year 2025. But when you look at early learning programs, we're 40. We're in the middle 30s when you're looking at English language arts state ranking. So you could see there's significant work to be done in regards to moving to that top 10. So this baseline establishes where we were 1920. Important to note, we're not using outcomes. This is actually the 1819 outcome when it comes to state rankings, when it comes to ELA performance and things of that nature. Now, when you look at the equity, culture, and climate, you see some significant changes in our target 2025. What we're looking at is, once again, using that same criteria and looking at where we rank amongst other districts in the county and moving us up to the top 10. And as you can see, one of the big measures that we used, because this was equity, and equity is impacted by all things, looking at the gap. So if you looked at the top and you look at the third bullet, decrease the achievement gap between all subgroups of students: African American, Hispanic, white, students with disabilities, English language learners, and students who are economically disadvantaged in proficiency on state standardized assessments in English language arts, mathematics. So SDRC ranks in the top 10 school districts with the smallest achievement gap. Once again, where do we actually start? We start by looking at the gaps between all counties in the district. And as you can see, when you look at the gap between white performance and proficiency in ELA versus African American, we are 47th out of 67. When you look at Hispanic performance in comparison to white, we are 49th. When you look at students with disabilities, compared to non-disability, 52. Once again, out of 67. So there is significant work to be doing. When you look at our white achievement on FSA, ELA as an example, we're 26th. So it's not as if the white performance on ELA is in the top 10 and the disparity goes down to 47. The gap at white starts at 26 and we're still 52nd. So there's work to do, and that just reinforces why we need to be maximizing the potential of all students. So once again, very, very, I would say lofty, I would say attainable goals, but very transparent on where we currently sit. You'll see the proposed targets for 2021 have been thought out. In some areas, we're stretching to a larger percentage in some areas versus other. There is a theory of action behind what we can accomplish. We know in the first year, we should be able to hit targets at a faster rate than in years 2, 3, 4, and 5. And looking at communication and engagement, this is information that we have collected. I think this is a major opportunity to accelerate our work in terms of being very intentional of not only how we're communicating, but how we're engaging community members and engaging our parents. So we're collected baseline information regarding the opportunities to have open access for parents to connect and and opportunities for parents to participate in workshops. So there are a number of very strategic things that we can do to open up our doors to provide development for parents, as well as ensuring that they have clearly defined paths and avenues to support their children as they participate in our school system. The next is talent development and support. And we will, once again, be looking at effective and highly effective teachers. One of the things that we need to do a better job of is how we're evaluating our teachers. The system that we have currently used is outdated and not aligned to our current practices. We need to spend a year in working with our teachers on designing what our tool needs to be collectively from a local effort or local area, as well as how we're evaluating our principals. Our out-of-field waivers is still not where it needs to be, as well as recruiting and retaining staff that represents our student body. Once again, you see there is significant opportunities to be strategic. We need to reevaluate how that work is being done because it has not yielded the results that we know that we could or would like to obtain. And then finally, in Targets 2025, our organizational and fiscal responsibility. Mr. Fagan has really placed a high expectation on fiscal responsibility, as he should, and you can see our goal is to move to 100 relatively quickly and then maintain the systems and structures to remain at 100 and looking at a number of different areas. So it is a very lofty goal that requires a great deal of work. I am confident the implementation of this plan will be a model for all districts to follow across the nation. That's not me being presumptuous. That's me being highly involved in strategic planning in very, very large systems, and then having the ability to put together a systematic plan that ties the performance of a principal in their evaluation, which will 100% be tied to this evaluation or this strategic plan. Everyone's annual performance, their key performance indicators will 100% be aligned to this strategic plan. So once again, this is a very comprehensive document. Looking forward to receiving your feedback. Based on that feedback, I will bring back to the board a completed strategic plan for your recommendation for approval to be implemented over the next 5 years. Attached to that strategic plan, or I'm sorry, in the following month prior to the opening of schools, I will bring my evaluation, which will be tied to the my key performance indicators will be tied to the annual targets. I will clearly define the strategies that will be implemented over the course of the year, who will be implementing those strategies, what action will be taken over the course of the year. I will provide an update to this board on a quarterly basis, a data-driven approach that clearly defines this is where we are, 25% throughout the school year. I am on target to meet this annual target. I am off target to meet this annual target. And these are the shifts and changes in practice that I'm going to take to ensure that we catch up and hit the expected target that we have set for ourselves. So with that, Madam Chair, that is my presentation on our strategic plan, and looking forward to receiving any feedback board members may have.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And if any individuals watching, they can go online and they can access this strategic plan. Mrs. Justice?
Thank you. Thank you for a well-thought-out, well-organized, and visually pleasing final draft. I'm looking at what I would imagine the second attachment is the print version, the final print version. I have a couple questions. I'm going to start with the first page, if I could. The School District of Indian River County logo is not on the first page of the plan. And I'm just curious as to why. I see that the logo's changed a bit. It says stronger together on the bottom of the other logo. But my curiosity on the first page, was it intentional that it was not put there? And then my question would be, above School District of Indian River County, that writing, you know, the houses in the stronger together has become an important part of what we're becoming. And is there some way to incorporate it? Because I believe it is somewhat of our brand. And so I'm just curious about that. The second question I have is, while our faces and names and pictures are in this document, the many staff members who have helped you with it are not. And so if you could just speak for a moment about how this strategic plan has been created within the school district. I think it's important. I'd like to know the collaborative process you've gone through. And then my last question is equity for students who need enrichment. I see a lot of information about equity, but what we know to be true is that students have a range of possibilities, and gender and race do not affect those. There are students who have, there are students who I believe, when we say maximizing the full potential, there's untapped potential in students. And you know, for example, at a school like Dodgertown, where I had spent quite a bit of time, there's a segment of very, very accelerated students in elementary school who are looking for enrichment. And where does that fit in? Where are those students reflected in this plan?
All right. The logo on the front page, absolutely unintentional. Didn't even process that. I believe you're right. The logo should be there. We did do branding around, Achieve 2025, which is the A that's there, almost claiming the A. So that is intentional. So the logo,
I like that part. I'm just curious.
No intention. I see a place for it right there. The shift in the logo, there's about 14 different logos in the School District of Indian River County. I agree, Stronger Together is becoming part of our brand. I think that has been a unifying statement. So that's just an opportunity really to kind of capture who we are. We have a logo out there that doesn't say that we're the School District of Indian River County. And I think as we begin to brand and create ourselves and become known across the nation, we want to have on our logo who we are, which is the School District of Indian River County. Maybe in 10 years we can just have a little swoosh like Nike, and we can be recognized, but we're not there yet. The process of creating the document, I'm very proud of and thankful for the opportunity to briefly speak through the process. In previous presentations, we spoke through the volume of work that we have engaged with community members, stakeholders, district staff, principals to really begin to create this particular document. And I can tell you, if you were to look at this document and say, well, let's go and find which one they copied, you couldn't, because the reality is this is 100% homegrown. And as I began this work and began this training on what I thought it would look like, is absolutely not at all what had been created. And I'm very thankful that it's not, because I think this is better. This is a document that I believe staff will look at and say, yeah, I remember when we shifted, where we were struggling with where equity would find, because those were conversations at multiple levels in the organization. I think principals will be able to look at the document and say, I had voice in the creation of this particular plan. I think all decisions moving forward will be tied back to this strategic plan, and it brings us together on using a collegial process in which all voice was heard in the creation of a unifying document. If we move forward with this, in terms of the pictures,
I didn't mean that. What I meant was, I know your staff has worked very, very hard. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to recognize their work.
Oh, you're so smart. Yes, that is true, and I should never miss an opportunity to acknowledge my staff as well as our leaders and employees across this district. This has been one additional thing with the rate of change and the expectation that I have had regarding what we're currently doing, asking a million questions in one regarding why we're doing things a particular way. This has been something above and beyond that. And I think once we get this done and improved, in some ways it's going to bring a sense of clarity to our employees, saying, yeah, that's it, that's my lane, that's what I'm doing, that's where I'm going.
The expectation set.
I understand why. Once we get this done, we have summer development for our principals, which will recreate in a very intense 3 days for them the creation of where their barriers are that impede their progress to maximize the potential of all students. And they'll have the opportunity to create a very focused school improvement plan that's going to focus in on equity, culture, and climate, and 3 strategies, instructional strategies that will help eliminate as many barriers as possible. What strategies can they focus in on that would help eliminate a majority of the barriers that are created within the particular school? So collectively, an absolutely outstanding effort by all in the design of this draft.
My last question. Equity for enrichment programs for students who are looking for enrichment, if they could be reflected in the plan somewhere.
I am confident that you will see that when you look at the strategies. I think some of the data, when you look at those 5-year targets and where we rank in terms of our gaps, speaks to a very specific need as it relates to equity regarding interventions. Tier 2, Tier 3 interventions. There's a great deal of work that needs to be done to ensure that they are fluid and they're being done with fidelity. What we're doing in our after-school space, opportunity for improvement there. I think when you see that particular annual strategy, you're going to see the majority of those annual strategies in teaching and learning well focused around the equity in that.
So my question back to you, and then this is my last question, Mrs. Org. I understand what you're saying, and I do believe that in the maximizing the full potential of all students, that's implied. But I think it needs to be visual. I think we need to speak to all parents. If we're going to say students with disabilities, we're going to be equitable. Students with different learning barriers, we're going to be equitable. Equity is at the forefront of everything we do. Every parent needs to have the confidence that their child's special needs, and every child has special needs in some way, and some need more support in our schools than others. And that's great that we're able to do it, but I want to make sure that every person sees themselves reflected in this plan. And to be honest, I think there's a segment of students that are not reflected when we talk about equity, culture, and climate in our schools, because every student deserves the right to not only reach grade level, but to go beyond as far as we can take them.
I have a better understanding of what you're asking, and
Thank you.
I know exactly where to add that, so I'm doing that now.
Okay, perfect. We have, it looks like we have Dr. Schiff, then Mrs. Berenborg, and then Mrs. Rosario.
Good afternoon, again. A couple of comments on this, and I'm echoing badly. I'm not sure what you want me to do to fix that. Is it echoing to you?
It's
No,
not that
it's
bad.
not.
Not really.
Okay, I'm getting feedback to me, but I'll try and talk over it. First off, love the reorganization, love the graphics, love the elevation of equity in not just the language of that particular principle or goal. Sorry, I have the wrong language because it's not right in front of me. But ways in which you've got that data-driven and empirically measured throughout the document. And as Mrs. Justice points out, visual cues are important as well. And it's really nice to see in a school district document this time that we are not only featuring similar looking faces, although I agree with Mrs. Justice that there are pieces of our student and broader community that are left out of that, but we already had that conversation, so I don't need to repeat it. Also, really appreciate, Dr. Moore, your attention to and your comments about transformational goals and transformational impact, and how that, while that's not usually in traditional strategic plans, that it represents something that we're committed to here. And I really value the ways in which you brought that forward, the ways in which not just you, but everybody on the team has brought that forward in this document. Now I'm going to say something a little less laudatory. I appreciate very much, and I understand the intention of the brevity of the mission statement, but to be honest, it still doesn't sing to me. While I understand the importance of, and I am totally on board with maximizing the full potential of all students, and I agree with that. When I hear you speak about it, it is far more engaging and inspirational than that single statement is. And what's missing for me in that statement is something about inspiring and creating and advocating. There's something more there. I want to read our mission statement, and I want to be deeply inspired by it. And while I'm moved by this, and I agree with it, and I value it, I don't read it and have a moment of just sort of awestruck inspiration. And I want that. I don't know if that's possible, and I understand that we have to have a short and to the point statement. I'm not sure I think this one is quite there yet. But I don't want to I don't want to have that full conversation here. I just want to surface it for conversation and how I'm feeling about that statement. I also acknowledge in this, I really appreciate the boldness of the targets and the annual targets and putting in empirical measures for those and where we're starting and where our goal is. To get from where we are to 10 or under in 4 to 5 years is pretty bold in a lot of these statements. And I value not only putting this in there, but the accountability and responsibility that that implies about who we choose to be in this district as a form of leadership. It occurred to me when we were speaking and Ms. Justice was talking about the logo, that in that is this concept of stronger together, which we've been using a lot as a hashtag and we've been putting on a lot of things. The other thing that keeps coming up in our conversations and in other places I see it is the Dr. Mooreism of Best by Kids. And I'm wondering if we want to elevate that in some way as, you know, I'm not sure where. I'm not sure if it is, maximizing the full potential of all students to be Best by Kids. I'm not sure if it's Stronger Together and Best Bike. Like, I don't exactly know where it fits, and we can dive into that conversation more later, either together as a board or when we have our individual meetings. But that phrase is really catching on in this town, and it is starting to denote and define the how you are being seen as a transformational leader in this community, and potentially how we're all seen. So I'm wondering if we want to incorporate that somewhere. Those are general statements. A few more specific ones that I appreciate in the statement, but may need some more explanation. There are a lot of places where we talk about 4-rank positions, 5-rank positions, and we may need a statement. I understand that that means our rank in the state, but that may not be immediately obvious to everyone reading this document. And we may need a footnote or something that clarifies what that is. In equity, culture, and climate, I really love your explanation of that. Your explanation of equity is not second to culture and climate, it actually drives culture and climate. So I appreciate the ways in which you elevated and put that first. Under that, in annual targets, you talked about decreasing disparities by 1 risk ratio point, which I understand it means that rather than a 4-to-1 risk ratio for Black students being at risk of disparities in classroom removals, you want to make that a 1-to-1 ratio proportionate to the population. But I'm not sure that everybody will follow and understand that without some clarification and a footnote.
I agree.
In one place, you talk about it as 1 risk ratio point, and in another place, it's talked about a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's a little inconsistent in the document how that's talked about. Because those are fairly technical terms, I think we need to be clear and consistent as well. Also, just love that you are bringing empirical measures into this. I think I said that already, so don't need to belabor that. But love that in each place, it's where we are now, where we'll be in a year, and where we'll be in 5 years. I think that's great. The goals here that say where we're going to be a year from now in this document, is that going to change then every year? So we've got it for 2021. Is this document then going to change for 21, 22, 22, 23, et cetera? And can you talk a little bit about how you envision that going as a fluid and dynamic both document and target?
Through the chair, so the answer is yes, and it isn't a delete, and add, it is the growth. So what I envision over the course of 5 years is adding the next column. So in 21, this was the goal, this is what is accomplished. Now in 22, we're adding a column. So we're not replacing and saying now, forget that 2021 went away, but growing it over the course of 5 years. So ultimately, adding to the strategic plan and growing the document each and every single year. So in length, it continues to grow, and it will be reflective of what we have implemented, where we have succeeded, and where we have fallen short in what didn't work. I think a lot of times what I have experienced, whether it's working with other districts or other system leaders or principals, there's always been this, well, this is how it was when I had this position, or this used to work really, really, really well, and let's go back and do it, kind of going backwards rather than going forwards. I want our capturing of implementation of those particular strategies really to document what is and isn't working and why it is or isn't working. And not fall short. Well, that worked for me in that particular school. Well, maybe it was the people, maybe it was the system. If something is working, it should work in all places. So this will create and continue to expand. So over the course of, 5 years, we'll be able to look back and say, this is where we were in 2021. This is where we are in 2025. I think our transformational impact statements may change. and we'll evaluate that year by year. I think our targets will change. I fully anticipate some of the 2025 targets to be accomplished in 2023 or by the 22-23 school year. And if we accomplish it, that doesn't mean that we just check it off the box and we would be done with it. We would establish what are the sustainable practices. Is the organizational practices that yielded that result, that attainment of that particular 2025 target, is there anything intentional that we need to do to ensure that we have sustainable behaviors, sustainable systems in the district so we don't ever walk away from the attainment of that particular goal? So maybe what we would call a bridge year where we've got the goal. This is what we need to do in order to make this a sustainable practice, that it just becomes a without thought behavior in the organization, that we capture and materialize forever the behaviors that brought us to that goal, and we don't slide back down, and then we replace it with another goal that's going to take us, an impact statement or a 2025 target that will take us out for the next 5 years. So designed in a way where it's not the generic, we'll see you in 5 years plan, but ultimately continuing to force us to have the conversation on a quarterly basis around the implementation of this strategic plan.
Okay. So you have any follow-up to that? Dr. Schiff?
Yeah, not for now, but I reserve the right to follow up later.
Okay, perfect. Let's see, Mrs. Berenborg, it looks like we lost Mrs. Rosario. Can we, okay, Mrs. Berenborg?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Schiff, I agree with many of the statements that you made, and along with Ms. Justice, there were things that I had picked out exactly with data points and things, so thank you for talking about aligning better, so I won't belabor that. I agree with the mission statement that maximizing the full potential of all students is good, but not best. And I think the word inspire or inspiration is important, because passionate teachers and passionate leaders do just that. And so that would include all of our employees in the mission statement as well. So I think that's important that we do that. You made 3 comments that I want to talk about, Dr. Moore.
Okay.
First one was, it's not a numbers game. Thank you. I have witnessed places that use numbers to make a school look like an A. And I know that takes place on a daily basis, because this is a competitive thing to be in a school. And I think it's more important that we are best by kids and do the right thing than play numbers games and juggle kids around. And I know that goes on, and I appreciate the fact that it's not going to go on here. You made the second comment, action, not just talk. Thank you. I think there's a lot of talk, and I'm ready for the action, so I'm excited about that. And the third statement you made was a passion, not just a job. And I know passionate teachers, passionate leaders understand what you're talking about. And I think Dr. Schiff's statement about Best by Kids, where it goes, might possibly go with that it's a passion to work with children. And if we're going to be Best by Kids, we need to be passionate. I agree with the fact that when I first looked at this, I had to really look at what are those numbers you're throwing at us? What baseline figures are those? And when you're looking at state rankings, I appreciate the fact that they're state rankings, but I agree, there needs to be a footnote or something. I know it says state rankings after each line, but I think it needs to be a bold thing at the top or a footnote at the bottom, so it's a little more clear that that's what we're looking at, is we want to compare ourselves to the state. Because I'm going to tell you, as a former principal, the first thing you do with your data when you look at it is you start comparing your school to other schools and then to the state data. I know that. So I think that's great that we're going to be doing that. The equity part, thank you for putting that first. I'm really glad, especially to be so sensitive right now to that. Appreciate that. And where we are as a district moving forward with our equity, That's important. And then the last thing I do want to bring up is the health and safety inspection violations. That was a little confusing to me. You had 100% for this year and then down to 75%. What exactly does that mean?
Through the chair, I know my team is laughing in the office right now because I questioned the exact same criteria. And to be honest with you, I struggle with it. So when you do those violations, every school right now has a violation, and as a principal, you recall, it may be an extension cord, it may be that propped door, or whatever that case may be. And I get the challenges of never having having zero health safety findings. So you may see a revision on that. The pushback from the team that I'm digesting now is that those things constantly change as the environments change. They're designed in a way to ensure that we're putting systems and structures in place around whatever that current reality is. But I do struggle with that.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I love where we're going with the district plan. I agree with Mrs. Justice on the logo on the front page. I think that we definitely need our district logo added there, not to remove Achieve 2025, but to definitely add our district logo on there. I like that we remove school, home, community from the logo, from the surrounding part of the logo, which is what we did have there. And now you have our district name. We talked about adding that in there, and I think it's great. Stronger Together in the logo. I like it, but I love Best Buy Kids.
I knew you were going to say
I've been saying it for I don't know how many meetings. I'm going to keep saying it. I know that you want to try to move away from Best Buy Kids because you want to be humble about it. I get it. You have shared that you do not want to be the reason why this logo is being used. But it is what it is, and you did bring it to us when we hired you, and it is definitely the way of thought right now. No matter where you go, no matter who you speak to, the phrase "Best Buy Kids" is becoming who we are, and I think that maybe we ought to consider Best Buy Kids instead of Stronger Together. Although I like Stronger Together, I'm becoming biased to Best Buy Kids. I like Best Buy Kids better. So with that, Dr. Schiff made really, I think every one of her comments would have been my comment had I went first. So she stole my thunder in that sense, but which is fine. And I don't want to reiterate. And even Terry brought up some really great points in the data part of the plan. But I want to talk about the mission statement, because I do believe that the mission statement is something that is not 100% catchy to me either. I did mention Best Buy Kids at our last meeting for our mission statement, but I understand that there are a lot of other voices that are a part of this plan. It is not just the board's plan, it is the entire district's plan. I thought maybe in line with the transformational impacts to make I think I mentioned this last time, to bring us to that point of transition. We are transforming education here in Indian River County. So I thought maybe instead of saying maximizing the full potential of all students, I suggested last time transforming the full potential of all students. include the transformational part of it in the mission statement. I don't know how board members feel about that or others, but it's a suggestion. Transforming the full potential of all students might actually be more inspirational. Let me move on here. The goals and the targets that are on page 7 of this plan are measurable. I've looked at all of them. When we reach a point where we want to see if there is growth in there, each one of those bullet points can be measured. And that's important because when we have measurable goals, we can actually see whether there is going to be growth or not, or when there will be growth, we can actually say, this is where we were and this is where we are now. So that's important. I'd like to add that we add a page with the budget alignment. I don't know where the budget fits in this. I will consistently say the same thing. We need to align our budget to our strategic plan, and I know that when our budget is approved, it will be, but at this point, maybe we can have a templated page that maybe aligns the target and where it would fit in the budget. Again, every year our budget changes. That would be as fluid as our data. Every year our data goals are going to change because as we increase in 2021, our projected move from 2021 to 2022 is going to be also different. And then as is for 23 and 24, moving into 2025. Fluid data, the data that is fluid is equally as fluid when it comes to our budget, because we don't know which budget is coming in, what monies are coming in and what are going out yet, but we still need to know that it flows and that there is a way that we are going to align our strategic plan with our budget. I'd like to see a page there that has the alignment. There are some font items that I'd like to talk to you about, separately. When someone is printing out the document, for example, there's a page that actually prints out black. But, those are things that I think you and I can talk about separately, unless you want me to mention them now.
No, we have a lot to get through.
No.
Perfect. And then the last thing that I think I would like to talk about that I didn't hear mentioned is technology in terms of our academic success goals, our focus areas in academic success. I don't see a lot of targets with technology, and I do not want to move away from the Treasure Coast Technical College and the use of technology in our schools and how important it is that our children use technology in this fast-paced world, of course, and especially during COVID-19 and our push toward virtual school, growing our virtual program as a choice option. I want to be able to read our district strategic plan and know that technology is going to be incorporated in there. Can we add something with technology in there? And I think that it doesn't take away from all of the other mentions of other board members, because I am in complete agreement with what has already been made. So I'm trying to mention some items that may not have been brought up.
Okay. Did you want to address that or no?
I could do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I like what the board members have already mentioned. I really think there's a lot of value on this the organizational and fiscal responsibility. I think that is key, especially going forward into the next coming years based on where we are right now with COVID and us not really understanding where our budget's going to be over the next couple of years. So having this as a priority in the strategic plan, I think it's very important to have. Another, something else about this that really I like is the fact that you utilized our district staff to put this together, and you didn't farm it out to an outside consulting company. And I think that's why we have such a good product here. So I just want to commend you on your work, and thank you for getting this put together.
Thank you. So just in closing, a number of key issues to circle back on. I will run it through the process with cabinet and principals once again. I think I can. The footnotes, I agree, they definitely need to be added. Maybe some additional language around 21st century learning, what the components of 21st century learning are, versus rather than just saying it, because that does, one of those components is technology. I think we were intentional of saying 21st century learning, but then shied away from really speaking about what are the components of 21st century learning, what does that mean, so to minimize some of the document. So once again, and I don't know if board members really, I said it at the beginning and I'll say it before I move to the next item, what's happening back in that room and what will happen tomorrow as we debrief this really drives the thought process around how we really debrief the dialogue that's being spoken here and the creation of a document. A lot of things that you're saying is echoed by staff and by principals, so it's not anything that's inconsistent or way out in right field by no means. It is a point of validation for me that our board members are in tune with the strategic plan and the reality of our district, because I'm hearing it from both sides, which is a very, very good thing regarding some of the issues that you brought up. So I'm looking forward to circling back, pushing this back out with you, getting it in a place really to begin the next phase of this work in the school district of Indian River County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, board members, go ahead.
Mrs. Zork, I had another comment.
Okay.
I want to come back to something Mrs. Rosario said about Mrs. Rosario's suggestion on refining the mission statement was around transforming the potential to maximize, I don't remember exactly how she said it, but transforming the potential to maximize however that went.
Transforming the full potential.
And I want to suggest that we're not actually transforming the potential, that what we're looking to transform is the education. Right. And so in our last meeting, I had talked about a mission statement incorporating that word that suggested transforming education to maximize the full potential. So that's one thing I may want to suggest coming back to revisit, but I've been playing around with some words here. I am by no means suggesting I've got it. It's a much bigger conversation, but there's something about, to inspire, educate, and create world-class leaders, or world-class education for 21st century leaders, or something like that. What we're looking to do is transform how we do education in the 21st century to produce leaders. And I get that you want to focus on students and keep the word students in there, and I don't have the problem with that, although I agree with and appreciate Mrs. Barenborg's comment that it's not that about including not just our students, but also everybody who contributes to that in our district. So I'd like to work on that more with you if we could. We Absolutely. Don't have to do that here, either with you and or with staff. But there's a lot in this statement, and this statement will really drive who we are and who we inspire for the next 5 years. And I want to see this statement, I'm from my socially distant space at home looking into the room, and I see that big blank wall over the chairs and the dais. I want that big blank wall to have our logo and our mission statement. And I want that mission statement to inspire everybody who comes to or watches a meeting. So I want to get this right. And I want to make sure it really reflects that the words will drive what we produce. It's not the other way around. And so I really want to get these words right. And as I think I've made abundantly clear in the last year and a half, I'm a stickler for words. So I want to continue working on this and refining this, and not settling for something because we're in a time crunch, but really making sure that we get these words exactly right to represent not just who we are and want to be right now, but how these words will drive who we are for the next 5 years and well beyond that.
Understood, and I have a few ideas, so I'm looking forward to circling back and problem solving.
Okay. So before we move on to our next item, Dr. Moore.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a follow-up, please. I had a comment up.
Okay, and then we need to jump into the superintendent's item.
Yes, I by no means, Dr. Schiff, did I suggest that we should use that. What I said was transforming the full potential of all students, but to add something with transforming in there. I mean, truly, we are, by hiring Dr. Moore, making radical changes in our district. And I actually believe that we're transforming education for 21st century learners.
Exactly.
But with that said, I just wanted to say that that was a suggestion, and truly, it does warrant more conversation. So I agree with you on that front. There is something also, I know that I mentioned that I would talk with Dr. Moore about some font suggestions, but what I did not mention before and what I want to mention publicly are the logos, the little designed logos for each of those focus areas. Like academic success, it has the 2 students with the graduation cap in it. The communication and engagement, it has a little computer screen and a cell phone in it. Those little icons, I just wanted to mention this publicly. The discussion that we had as a board collective before you came to the county, maybe last year, it was right about the time that the new board members were elected and joined. It was that these logos that we had were not of high quality and could not be used on social media platforms or Facebook platforms because they weren't clear. So if you were to copy and paste it, for example, or share it in some way, it would come out like pixelated. There weren't of high quality pixels. And I'm not even a tech person to say what that would be, but in the copying and pasting, and there was a question about whether they should even be used on business cards because of the quality of the actual picture, if that makes sense. So although I like these, I just want us to be careful to use logos and items that when we are printing or copying or using in other documents somehow or another, transferring, that they are not low quality, that they are high quality pixels that can very easily transfer or copy or paste or whatever into all platforms of social media without having that blurry look to it.
Okay,
Right now, and it'll be, everything will be print ready
all right.
and modern.
Board members, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will come back, and then Dr. Moore will jump into his last presentation. Okay?
Thank you.
On the superintendent evaluation update on his progress since he's been with us. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moore.
I'm just navigating the. So as Brandon gets our technologies squared away, that'll work. We've had a couple conversations regarding how, in this short time of my superintendency, how to conduct an evaluation in order to ensure that we have a criteria. I think we just had a great conversation on how we will be creating my evaluation on the front end of a school year and have a full year to provide updates to the board regarding the implementation and impact of the steps that will be in place, which would be the strategic plan to evaluate me over the course of a year. I think initial conversations were led by me wanting or seeking the desire to receive feedback, as I've said, both publicly and individually. I think as the CEO of the organization, it is a good practice to model really what you expect. And I think we will be modeling that practice. I think we just modeled that practice because ultimately, as we're defining what our strategic plan is, we are also defining what the key performance indicators would be. So having the opportunity to provide updates regarding the action that was taken as well as the impact and the outcome as a result of those actions is very meaningful from a systems perspective. So what I've done here, really looking to bring closure to this particular school year and really move our focus to the opening of school years. This is initially was an item that I thought I would be bringing in July, but when I forecast ahead and I look at the items that were coming, we're really beginning to turn the page from one school year to the next. And I think it would be a clear divide if we close next school year in June, these next board meeting in June, and really begin to put our focus and actions into the upcoming school year. And there, as we will discuss this evening, this will be an opening of schools like no other opening of schools. And there are so many unknowns regarding how school will open, how we ensure to our constituents, to our families, that it is a safe, clean environment. It will be, but how we communicate that and address concerns and issues that aren't necessarily concerns or issues, but are fears, ensuring that we as a system have the safeguards in place to protect the number one asset parents have, which is their children. So it is a very, very unique school year that we will be opening. Very different for the school district of Indian River County as well, because not only are we opening under the confines of COVID and that reality, we're also opening under a new strategic plan. We're opening up under a design based on the implementation of that 90-day plan. So there's a lot of new that will be taking place in the coming months. And to bring closure to this particular year, I think it's timely to discuss what has been accomplished over the last 5 months, what action has taken, and then ultimately what has it yielded. I think it's put us in a very prime place to really ensure we take the next step. So what I will do, just to structure this conversation, is provide an update in very specific areas and overarching areas. So some of the areas that we'll look at and provide an update on is the 90-day plan, the development of the African American Achievement Plan, Superintendent Board Relations, which is connected to the 90-day plan, District Union Relations and Negotiations, Superintendent's Advisory Councils, District Realignment and Restructuring, COVID-19 Response, Communication and Community Engagement, Strategic Planning Process, Leadership and Instructional Coaching Pools, Academies. So those are some of the things that have been addressed over the course of the last 5 months, and we'd just like to highlight some of those things that has been done. Brandon, help me a little bit When we began with the 90-day plan, I don't think I need to speak in detail regarding the elements of the 90-day plan, but it really has been the process that has driven my work leading into COVID-19. It was very unique that we had a presentation to the board the Tuesday before schools were shut down. And it was not that shutting down schools was a good thing by any means, but it was a clear transition from the completion of phase 2, what was learned, what was accomplished. We spoke through the volume of interactions that we took place. We will fully implement that 90-day plan coming into the next board meeting, which will be the realignment of district offices once again, the reconfiguration of district offices once again, eliminating redundancies, ensuring that we are in place. This 90-day plan really was the creation of the new strategic plan, and I think we have hit the mark when it comes to creating that plan, really ensuring that the outcomes that were defined within that plan have been delivered. When you look at the development of the African American Achievement Plan, that was something that I took on really over the break, the holiday break, walking into January. You all know the story. It was the first Friday that I was here back in Miami. We did not have an approved African American Achievement Plan. We recreated the plan. We worked with the Joint Committee in the creation of a plan that was endorsed by them, approved by this board. We sent in the update, which was required in March, just prior to, once again, COVID-19, a jointly signed letter that we had been working in collaboration with the NAACP, with the Joint Committee in the creation of that plan. Unfortunately, as soon as we sent that letter away, school closed. And I have said publicly a number of times, we were just moving from the creation of, the action that was going to be taking place to actually implementing that action, and then everything shifted and modified. In that modification, as a result of COVID-19, still continue to work with schools, work with principals, requiring that the report card continued to be updated. We'll provide an update again tonight because it is timely, as I did 2 board meetings ago, looking at where we're continuing to find success and where we're continuing to have challenges. So very proud of that work, captured key accomplishments there. One of the things that I know in this particular area is we're nowhere close to being done. We will be holding over this, towards the end of this month, the Joint Committee will be coming together with members of my team, and we're going to literally rip apart the action plan that was approved by this board and developed in partnership with the Joint Committee and recreate a new plan. And as I said it, when the plan was created, if we bring back the same plan, then ultimately that we have failed. We learned from implementation. Even in this modified window of implementation, there are opportunities to improve. Streamlining some of the data is a conversation I had just earlier this week with individuals who are deeply involved in that work. So there are opportunities really to continue to refine and create and move this work forward. District relations, if you look back to the strategic plan, you can see very vigilant in being out there in the community, 123 formalized individual or group meeting contacts with board members. And I don't need to speak to the board members regarding the structure of how we meet, but in full transparency, because that's one of our guiding principles. We meet on a weekly basis, an opportunity to peruse items that are coming in front, to introduce those items to board members, rather than just say, here it is, look at it. Cabinet members have the opportunity to introduce those items and say, hey, this is what's coming, review it, I'll be available for any additional questions. That happens typically a week or 2 weeks prior to us coming in this room to have a public conversation regarding the items. Why do we do that? We want board members to fully understand the intent of all items that they're being asked to approve. And this allows that we're having much more fruitful conversations, which is evidenced by the conversation that we just had. And those are the structures that we've had. We've implemented some changes or shifts in practice. One of the things that I had mentioned during my interview process, we have a system to ensure as things happen in the community. We've done some very good work of establishing a protocol to ensure board members are informed as incidents are taking place, so they're not hearing things secondhand or thirdhand from their constituents. So ultimately, yes, I'm aware that is something that's happening, and the district is taking the appropriate steps. That happens both in terms of safety alerts as well as media alerts. Those structures continue to be implemented and continue to improve. Prior to the break, we were in a good, rotation in terms of pushing that information out as timely as possible. So very happy with that. When you look at the union relationships, I think we have done an absolutely outstanding work of continuing to build an open and honest relationship, a transparent relationship, as evidenced by the contract that we were able to execute, as evidenced by the insurance which we were able to execute, as evidenced by the MOUs that we were able to quickly navigate and put into place as a result of COVID-19. And I say that as a point of pride because I know there were so many organizations or not systems that were not able to create or move that work as quickly as we did. So we have really negotiated and put a relationship front and really pulled on our unions as a sense of information or a source of information regarding how to solve some complex problems. So we're very proud of that work and we'll continue to build upon that. As I've mentioned both earlier, we went through an initial district realignment. That was something during my initial interview that I thought I would be doing coming at our next board meeting. The opportunity presented itself to reorganize, executed that reorganization, approved by this board. Thank God we pulled the trigger when we did because following COVID-19, the volume of work that needed to be done would have been overwhelming without making those shifts and changes in practice. And a great deal of the reason we've been successful in the response or reaction to COVID-19 had been as a result of that shift in practice and responsibilities, both under the area of school operations as well as curriculum instruction, creating the provision plan. Could not have been done at the level in which it was if those same individuals had to supervise principals and shutting down their schools and going through laptop distributions and the cleaning requirements at the same time. So that restructuring really helped to move that work forward. Looking forward to continuing the conversation of making yet again other organizational shifts and changes really to protect what we've defined to be important or a priority within our strategic plan and ensuring that we are designed in a way where we're constantly growing our teachers, growing our administrators, and ensuring that we're appropriately evaluating, have a system of continuous growth and improvement for all employees in our system while at the same time organized in a way that we're going to continue to evolve and create ourselves as a national leader. In looking at COVID-19, once again, there's a great deal of information that's presented there in terms of closing down schools, passing out laptops, distributing, creating of the provision plan, responding to the needs of our community, conducting the professional learning in the midst of COVID-19, transitioning back, establishing the work group that we have, which has met, I want to say 5 times now, community members, principals, parents, teachers, all giving us feedback on what are the restrictions as they are available to us now, and what would be the impact on a effective return to school. So really opening up lines of communication regarding that particular reality. Weekly, actually started with daily meetings with principals regarding how we're closing our schools. Facebook Live sessions. Cannot tell you how many Facebook Live sessions I had where simply communicating the reality of where we were as a system and seeking opportunities to have impact. We had a town hall in the midst of COVID-19 where we provided updates to our community and answered questions live right there in the midst of that. Our webpage continued to be recreated and enhanced, pushing out that information. So excited about how the community really came together and really reinforced that we are stronger together to put together that plan. Community communication and community engagement still needs to be part of our strategic plan, but you see the 104 scheduled community events attended, scheduled district events attended, 42 attendees at the superintendent's in-person town hall, and community meetings, 425. That work needs to continue to grow. We're not doing this work in isolation. Continue to push myself out there and really seek input and understanding regarding the creation of our strategic plan, the design that I'll be proposing next week. When you look at our strategic plan, won't need spend much time here because it has really been the bulk of our conversations during these workshops over the last 3 meetings. But you can see and have been involved in a very comprehensive process that has developed that document that we just spent the last 90 minutes discussing, so I won't spend much time there. Very excited. We just went through and completed our instructional coaching academy. There were 78 applications submitted. I think there's 61 actually made it through to the academy. It was an extremely interactive and high intense 3 days. But as a result, we have coaching pool applicants that are currently interviewing with our principals, working with our principals to ensure we have the right coaches at the right schools, really begin the process of investing on a daily basis 100% of that job at schools, providing direct support to our teachers over the course of the entire year. Our principal pool, we had 26 applicants, approximately, I want to say 9 to 11 individuals interview who made it through to the round, so we're getting ready to release that information. It was a great opportunity for me to sit and see the caliber of some of our assistant principals. And I can tell you, we have assistant principals who are principal ready, and we're going to continue to invest in them. So when a position becomes open in the next several years, we're just not saying, hey, surprise, you're a principal, you're prepared, you have been invested in over the course of a year or 2 years, depending on when that opportunity is available to them, really to ensure that we are continuing to build the bench. Same thing with assistant principals, getting ready to conduct the final round of interviews for that, really to continue to invest in them. And that is a priority. You have to have a bench in place. You have to, as a system, we may not be the largest system, but that we're large enough. Do we need to have an answer to who's next? Because as we recreate and we begin to be recognized for the work that we're going to do as it relates to the impact that we're having on children, people are going to start to look, and people are going to want to, come in and steal our people. And not that we want any of them to go, but they're going to want to come in and see the great things that are happening in this particular district. When you look here, these really look through and relate to the goal areas that I identified during my initial 90-day plan. So I established a number of goal areas. So if you look at each of these key areas accomplished, this hasn't been a passive 5 months, or let me take the time to slowly introduce myself and get to know people. It was extremely intentional of addressing these 5 goals to fully understand where the district was and what action needed to be taken in order to ensure that we are finding success. You can see the depth in which we addressed each of these 5 goal areas over the course of 5 months. That is capturing the work that we have done over the last 5 months. Is the work complete? Absolutely not. Will it ever be complete? Absolutely not. Do we have the data to evaluate what the impact was? Unfortunately, nobody does. But if you were to look at our progress monitoring data, if you were to look at the systems that were being created in our principals' ability really to get into classrooms, provide feedback to teachers, and really begin to create those systems, we were expecting to have some nice returns on the investment that really had been taking over the course of the entire school year. As we move into the next school year, the work still continues. This is a graph, although it's sideways here, it really looks through what we have completed and what's in progress. If you were to look at this document, what's in progress is the completion of our strategic plan. What's in progress is the realignment of our particular district, and you'll see over the summers and going into the upcoming months, the creation of our summer development, the creation of our opening school exercises, school improvement plans, really beginning to move the district forward. So I thought it was very important to bring this item that captures the work that has been done. I know that I quickly ran through this document. What I am suggesting aligned to, which is the other document that was here, I've provided a form in which to provide feedback, looking at standards that are provided by the American Association of School Administrators, which serves as points of reference to provide feedback as it relates to a superintendent's performance. So what I would like, based on the information submitted, based on our ongoing conversations over the course of the last 5 months, provide opportunities for each of you in our upcoming meetings within each of these areas: school leadership, district culture, policy and governance, communications, community and relations, organizational management, curriculum planning and development, instructional management, human resource management, values and ethics of leadership. Those are the areas which are research-based as it relates to a particular superintendent. It also gives key descriptors. I think that would be very meaningful information to provide feedback. That information can be provided to me individually in our upcoming meetings, and then an opportunity to provide in a public space at our next workshop feedback that you have for me. That is my item. Not necessarily my item, but my presentation. Looking forward to your feedback. Once again, this is something that I wanted to bring forward, present, and capture what has been done over the last several months. I did feel uncomfortable, quite honestly, talking about how we're going to evaluate me in a coming month or 2 months, just a month prior or 2 weeks prior to actually, conducting that evaluation. So I wanted to say, hey, let's capture the work that has been done. Let's look at the work that had been promised. Let's look at the impact of the areas that have been driving us as a community and ultimately as a nation over the last 5 months. And then let's capture that feedback to model the process of providing that feedback to me. I think when we bring the strategic plan next week, it will clearly, or in 2 weeks, it will come with a complete evaluation on the front end, which I've said a couple of times during this meeting. That will drive and be my evaluation for the whole world to see in July as how I will be evaluated in the following July. So with that, Madam Chair, that is the presentation.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Schiff?
It always takes a minute to hit that unmute button. Thank you, Dr. Moore. This is really comprehensive and useful and thoughtful, so thanks for that. On the document that goes alongside this, the superintendent's annual update, board member feedback, we didn't go through that here, but I'm presuming that it's just attached and we can go ahead and talk about that. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'd like to, I have a question and I think 2 comments on it, but I might change my mind mid-sentence. In this, on the board member feedback, I'd like to see also somewhere in here, which it's implied and embedded but not explicit, is something about, this may not be the right words, but like fiscal accountability and responsibility. How you've managed the finances of the department, of the district. And while that lays specifically in Mr. Fagan's domain, bottom line comes down to you in the end. So I'd like to see that added in here.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if on this, if this is the form that you mean to be for us to use in your actual evaluation, or if this is just a guideline for us to give you some feedback. And if it's the former, about the actual document that we use, that I'd like to make it a little more quantitative. And I'd like to have some actual rankings and I'd like it just not to be anecdotal and qualitative, but actually to put something also empirical in it, because I think moving forward, that will help you, that will help us, and that will be more transparent for the community. That may be the next step, and we just haven't gotten there yet because we're only starting to have the conversation based on what you presented. But as we move forward and we get to the actual evaluation process within the next, at this point, month, I'd like to make sure that we're as clear, explicit, transparent, and quantitative as possible, in addition to the qualitative part that's implied by this form.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Rosario?
Hi. Okay, so there's a lot, which I love. And I'm very grateful that you have been very organized with your work. And now we're able to see it all actually in one document, which is pretty incredible. One of the things that I want to ask, let me get there, is similar to what Dr. Schiff just mentioned, but the feedback, the board member feedback. Next year, now very interesting because obviously we won't work half the year, COVID-19, but all everything. But here, moving forward, are we planning to see a different kind of feedback?
Through the chair, I think the answer is 100% yes.
Okay.
So it will be everything that Dr. Schiff just mentioned. It will be that those annual targets in which capture the growth or lack of growth. It will capture the other areas in terms of communication, which I will bring to the board to provide feedback and criteria. So I think my struggle, to be very open and honest, is we're talking about rating me a month before I'm going to be rated, and bringing that to my attention a month before I'm going to be rated. And I am very open and honest to receiving feedback, but at the same time, in complete transparency, if you're going to evaluate someone, tell them how he's going to be evaluated. Tell him how he's going to be evaluated. Define this is the criteria in which you're going to be evaluated, which I'm completely willing to have, and I'm completely willing to provide updates, but I don't think it is a good practice as an organization or a $300 million organization to say, hey, let's evaluate the superintendent. His contract says, let's evaluate, and is to bring the system on how he's going to be evaluated prior to August. So what I'm trying to do here is to capture a structure, because it is the time to conduct an evaluation. But we don't have an approved evaluation in which to conduct. So this is an opportunity to say, hey, this is the work that has been done. This is the impact that it has based on the establishment of our relationships, the structures that we have created. This is where I think we are. This is the feedback I have for you in a formal thing. And this is the feedback that I would like to give publicly, completely on board with that. And then moving into next school year, come July, here is the document that we will evaluate the performance of the superintendent on day one, that we will, with the evaluation taking place 1 year later, and we will receive updates each 9 weeks or each quarter regarding the progress that he is making within each of those key performance indicators, and have the opportunity to provide feedback to him over the course of the year. So I see it, we're in this peculiar situation in which I have the desire to model, the desire to have feedback to grow my performance professionally. I have that desire, to model the practice, and so, because that's exactly what supervisors across the entire system are doing. And for me to say, hey, go and do it, and not engage in it myself, I don't think is the right thing to do, with the only variance being, I started halfway through the year. So I think desiring to have the conversation, desiring to receive the feedback, and desiring to model the practice, but just a little uncomfortable that we haven't clearly defined what the criteria would be on the front end, which we will do moving forward.
Yes, and I agree with you, and I do not want us to be a board that in any way violates or stretches the terms of your contract. By no means. I certainly want us to respect what has been written in your contract. And I think, though, when Mrs. Barenborg brought this up, and when we were talking about this, even you and I, in our personal conversations about what it would look like to evaluate you this year, I suppose that it was just a mention of, let's start discussing what that would look like, so that when that time comes, close to the date that is in your contract, we could have something already in hand, ready to already have put in place, basically, something that we can actually sit down with you. We don't have to start this process in a month from now. This process would have already been done as it is now, so that we can come to consensus on what it will look like in a month, basically. So I don't want you to feel uncomfortable in that sense. I am not willing to evaluate you today. I certainly would like extra time, because we still haven't even gone through the budget process. And I do believe that the fiscal responsibility, that falls under your job description. So you certainly have a role in that. So that certainly needs to be put in there. But I thank you for the transparency in that, because it is what it is. But I'm only asking for next year moving forward, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around next year's format is going to be very different, because you are going to align it with the strategic plan. So I just wanted to, right?
Yeah, no, through Chair,
Okay.
and I agree with everything you said. And
Okay.
when I bring the evaluation, it would be, here's the scoring sheet, for lack of a better
Right.
way of saying it. Here are the KPIs. This is when we're going to get the progress. that time is not now. And as I started this presentation, that's really where I want to get. That's where I want to get to. That's where I'm excited to move to, because that is the entire evaluation package with a bow on it from day one. That I will replicate for all principals. And I'm eager to get there. The strategic plan does come first because it's based on that, which I think is the absolute right thing to do. In terms of fiscal responsibility, you're right, that needs to be included, and I will include that and modify this particular form based on those recommendations.
Yeah, that's the only reason why I asked that part of it, is moving forward, what that would look like, because if not, if this is the format that we were considering, then I would just suggest that within this format, adding a new column in there that would align with the key targets that are in the plan. Of course, this would be next year.
Right.
But I get it. The other thing that I wanted to throw out there for board members in terms of our feedback is, do we want the feedback to be the same for all of us in narrative form? Or do we want the feedback to be based on a rubric and narrative form? Do we want our feedback to look similar in what it should be? Or are we just going to leave it open for each board member to provide the feedback for him in each one of these categories differently? I don't know if we want to be on the same page in that sense, or what your thoughts are on that. Each one of you, I'm just throwing this out to the board members.
Personally, Jackie, I think, I like the idea of the narrative because it's a review. Going into the rubrics, I think that's getting more into a rating system that we probably should reserve for the next evaluation. That's my opinion.
Okay. Do you all agree? I mean, should we all keep it that way? I mean, I'm good with consensus. I'm not very on this one. I'm not.
When I speak, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Moore, thank you for doing all of this work, because we did hire you to transform the district, and you have certainly done a lot of work from day one up until now, and I will provide you my individual feedback when we have that one-on-one time.
Sure she will.
All right, and just as adding a rubric, I don't see any issues, with that feedback / rubric. It's an easy adjustment.
It was just something that I wanted to have a discussion with board members about. I'm not favoring one more than the other. I'm totally okay with narrative, written feedback. I have no preference at this point.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mrs. Berenborg?
Thank you. Let me just write my one little point. The reason why I brought this up is because I think an evaluation is an opportunity to give feedback, encouragement, and acknowledgement of performance. And I do encourage all our board members to read his contract, because that was not what I was getting at, is doing a formal evaluation this year. What I was getting at is giving him some feedback on his progress so far, especially with what he promised when he came and interviewed. And I appreciate what he put together today. As a matter of fact, it was more comprehensive than I was expecting. So I appreciate the fact that he's giving us a feedback form. I do not believe we should provide a rubric this year, because we don't have the data to support it. And I think that when you're evaluating someone, you really need concrete data to support what you're putting down on paper. So I think a feedback form is very appropriate. There are a couple of points that he brought up. Working with the equity committee on the equity plan, I think, is a great opportunity for you to keep it as a fluid document and flex what you're doing. So I appreciate that. I believe board members are briefed well, and I think we will give that in our feedback. I've never felt more briefed than I did in the last couple of weeks, especially. So I appreciate that.
All right.
Union relations, we can all give feedback on that, I'm sure. One question I had that wasn't put up, and that was something that I used last year to really dig into, and that was the employee, parent, and student surveys that were done at the end of last year. Curious as to whether or not those have gone out this year. And we'll be getting those because I think that gives you a good baseline on where you're starting as a superintendent and what we can give as a baseline for us evaluating you in the future. So I do have some other points, but if you can talk to that.
Through the chair, I have to pull that information. I want to say the school climate surveys, which you're referencing, that I don't know that they actually went out, but it is information that we could. I mean, Panorama is data that we pull, which really speaks through how students feel in particular schools. Very powerful data, and we were pursuing that. But we would be able to have that both probably at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year. So definitely that information would be involved or help inform your decisions as well as mine regarding progress of our district.
Great, thank you. And there has been a form that has been used in the past by this district to evaluate former superintendents. And I think that I'll kind of ask Mrs. Zork as our chair to bring that form forward at the appropriate time so that we can look at whether or not that needs to be adjusted so it is.
Okay.
Strategic plan. So I'm trying to look at that and really agree to it with the superintendent because I agree with you. You want to both agree to what you're going to be evaluated on, and it's not fair to anyone evaluation with the rule for the fact. So I think at the appropriate time, I don't know if that's August, that we want to look at that form and whether or not that form is appropriate moving. I think that's all I have at this time, but I don't think empirical or quantitative data this year there's enough there to really look at, especially since you came in. So I think that an open-ended feedback form is really great because it'll help you understand where we're looking at things and also moving forward when we do get the data we need. So thank you for everything you put together and your staff.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Did you want to speak to that on August?
No, my recommendation is in reviewing that particular form as well as doing some research regarding other documents that are used, relatively generic documents that are used to evaluate superintendents, and then seeking feedback from those who provide mentorship to me. I think the form that I proffer will be open in a way to receive your feedback, but will capture in a much more significant way that evaluation form, slightly modified from its current practice, as well as the ability to quantify the data as it directly connects to key performance indicators that were the driving force of the district. I think those two combinations will provide what I'll say, just to be open and honest, the most comprehensive evaluation of any other of the 66 superintendents in this county. And I think did I say yes? Thank you.
Only one superintendent in this county, Dr. Moore.
Still new to me. Still new. Still new. But I think it will be bolder than any other of the 66. I'd bet on it. I think it will be more aggressive than the other 66. And I know it will be more transparent than on the other 66, and it will be more comprehensive. That's just what my children or wife would expect of me.
Perfect. Mrs. Rosario?
Yes, Dr. Moore, I have a question. It doesn't necessarily have to reflect this feedback tool that we're using or this feedback form that you provided for us. But the American Association of School Administrators is an organization that you referenced in the feedback form in the first little paragraph there. When I went on their website, they actually had an article that referenced online evaluation tool for superintendents or superintendent's online evaluation tool. Are you familiar with that? Is that just something that is, what is that? Do you know?
Through the chair, it's a online evaluation tool that you would complete and very similar to the process that I followed this morning, capturing and rating a superintendent's performance, very similar to probably the forms that you would fill out when you're evaluating teachers in established criterias, effective, needs improvement, that kind of area. As I look at those, very similar to our strategic plan, I think what we will create and provide you the opportunity to receive feedback on will capture all of those specific areas, while at the same time have them tailored to our very specific needs. And I think my evaluation will be so tight because it will be 100% of the work that is important, capturing the domains of what an effective leader should be have in place. So, as I looked at that, and that was just to be honest, as I researched, what's the quick fix for now to get us to what this ideal document will be that is very specific to the school district of Indian River County's superintendent. They just kind of sometimes take you off message or off target rather than pull you on. And I think you all have the opportunity to be very informed in terms of members of a community that I'm serving as their superintendent, and having that particular feedback. Sometimes a number 3 versus a narrative at this particular stage. The narrative would be so much more meaningful to me, or the dialogue or conversation would be so much more meaningful to me, of saying, hey, cool, I got 3 out of 4. I want to know why, what's behind it, because their rate of learning, being new to a community, is aggressive. Yeah. And the feedback and conversation accelerates my learning and understanding.
Okay, thank you. And my last suggestion for policy and governance on the feedback form, I'm not even sure if it would go in there, but if it does, under the key descriptors, I might add meetings and workshops for board meetings and the management of staff at the board meetings and the agenda items and so on and so forth. Even the superintendent workshop. I mean, those are pretty critical that are under your, your direct supervision. And I believe that would fall under policy and governance. Yeah. But wherever it would go, those are certainly something that we should all pay attention to.
Okay. Mrs. Justice?
Thank you very much. Dr. Moore, I agree with Mrs. Barenborg when she says that we have all been briefed very well. I agree. I think that's been one of your strengths, is really getting the information out, making sure that we understand it, and just really the nature of the work that you do is very transparent. You have never shied away from a question. You have always been willing to receive constructive criticism, and you have shown you have walked the walk. We have just gone through a number of different presentations where your thoroughness and thoughtfulness has been demonstrated. So I am fine with this evaluation as it stands right now. I think that working towards incorporating some qualitative data when we have it is the right goal, and I think working with the strategic plan will definitely help you to do that. But I have no doubt that you are probably harder on yourself than we could ever be on you, and you have shown that by your work ethic and your commitment to these students. So I'm comfortable with this, and I think I expect a great evaluative tool out of this school board working with you.
All right, so we're going to bring the not the evaluation, but the review. Do you want us to meet with you individually and go through the review, and then we bring those review public?
Through the chair, just in listening to this conversation, I would like the opportunity to make some edits and modifications to the form. I think there were some good suggestions there. Push it back out and get your feedback once again, and if that's okay, maybe just pull it as a point of discussion in our next board workshop. because the reality is, you know, the calendar year ends in June. So if we've normed on the structure of the document along with the presentation, I think we'll be in a good place to bring it and say, yes, this is what we'll use for this particular year. It also will give me some time to give a level of comfort to what the next evaluation tool will look like. And I acknowledge, you know, we spoke about it in description, we spoke about it in terms of the KPIs. I think there's a great understanding in terms of, you know, the data points that will be driving the evaluation and how it aligns to the strategic plan. But some of the areas which aren't necessarily 100% aligned to the strategic plan, areas very similar to what we just discussed, that hasn't been shared, and that's on me. So I'll put that all together going into the approval of our strategic plan and ultimately what will be that evaluation and really dive into a very, very comprehensive tool that covers all levels of leadership as it relates to the superintendency to ensure that we will be successful.
Okay, just one item that was brought up by another board member. I would like to make sure that we have a section so that we can give our thoughts on one of our focus areas, which is financial responsibility. So that's something that I would like to have added in.
No, I agree, and as I peruse the form, I don't know how I missed
Okay.
that.
All right, so that is all I have on that. I look forward to you bringing it back at the next workshop.
All right, thank you very much, and that's all I got.
Okay?
All right.
All right, board members, we're going to call this meeting at 4:02, and I will see you back here at 6 p.m.